Good evening, and welcome back to the Quiet Library. Tonight, I'd like to invite you on a journey unlike any we've taken before. We've wandered through ancient Rome, we've visited philosophers whose ideas have survived for thousands of years. But this evening, we won't remain in one city. Instead, we'll travel across deserts, across mountains, across vast open grasslands, across cultures, languages, and civilizations, because our destination is the Silk Road, or perhaps, should I say, the Silk Roads, because despite its famous name, the Silk Road was never one single road. It was an immense network of trade routes stretching thousands of miles across Asia. Some paths crossed endless deserts, others wound through snow-covered mountain passes. Still others followed fertile river valleys where travelers could rest before continuing their long journeys. Together, these routes connected China, Central Asia, India, Persia, the Middle East, and eventually the Mediterranean world. Goods traveled these roads, ideas, religions, languages, scientific discoveries, even recipes, all found new homes because of the people who walked them. Tonight, we begin in one of the great oasis cities of Central Asia. Many historians point to cities such as Samarkand, Bukhara, and Merv as among the most important crossroads of the Silk Road. Exactly where our journey begins matter less than what surrounds us. The sun is slowly fading. Golden light spills across mud brick walls. The heat of the afternoon begins to fade. Palm trees sway gently in the evening breeze. Somewhere nearby, water trickles through irrigation channels fed by precious underground springs. Without these oases, long-distance travel across much of Central Asia would have been nearly impossible. For thousands of years, these islands of green transformed deserts into places where civilizations could meet. Listen carefully. The marketplace is preparing to close. A blacksmith delivers the final strike of his hammer before extinguishing the forge. A spice merchant carefully folds colorful fabrics over baskets filled with cinnamon, pepper, cardamom, and fragrant incense. Children weave between travelers, laughing, completely unaware that they are growing up in one of history's greatest crossroads. Nearby, a scribe finishes copying a letter for a merchant who cannot write. Paper, still a remarkable innovation in much of the world. We'll soon begin another long journey westward. The smell of fresh flatbread drifts from a nearby oven. Tea is poured into small cups. Someone begins turning a stringed instrument as evening approaches. It is peaceful. But the city is also preparing for tomorrow, because just beyond its walls, another caravan is getting ready to depart. Dozens of camels kneel patiently in the sand. Bundles of silk are wrapped carefully in protective cloth. Crates of porcelain, bales of wool, sacks of spices, rolls of paper, glassware from distant workshops. Every package represents weeks, sometimes months, of travel. The merchants check their ropes, count supplies, fill leather water skins. The guides quietly study the sky. Tomorrow's journey will begin before sunrise. Traveling in the cooler hours conserves both water and energy. Looking at these patient animals, you may notice something unusual. Most have two humps. These are Bactrian camels, unlike the one-humped dromedary camels, more common in the Arabian deserts. Bactrian camels were exceptionally well suited to the colder winters and harsher climates of Central Asia. Their thick coats protected them from freezing nights. Their strength allowed them to carry heavy loads across astonishing distances. Without them, much of this trade would have been impossible. One by one, lanterns begin glowing through the caravan. The conversations grow quieter. Some travelers whisper prayers, others write a final note to family members before departing. Some simply sit beneath the fading light, watching the first stars appear. Tomorrow, the road awaits, but tonight, for just a little while longer, we rest beside the oasis, listening to the quiet heartbeat of one of history's greatest journeys. In the distance, a camel bell rings softly. The desert wind carries it gently across evening air. Our journey has only just. The morning journey has long since passed. Now, the sun hangs low once again. Its golden light stretches across the desert, turning every grain of sand into something that almost seems to glow. The caravan moves at an unhurried pace. There is no reason to rush. On the Silk Roads, patience was often more valuable than speed. A successful journey depended not upon arriving first, but upon arriving at all. Listen closely. The soft rhythm you hear is not the sound of horses. It's the slow and steady footsteps of camels. Each movement is deliberate, each step carefully placed upon the ancient path. Around their necks hang small bronze bells. They're not loud, not musical, just enough for travelers to hear one another, even when the dust of darkness reduces the visibility. The gentle ringing becomes part of the journey itself, a sound that has echoed across these roads for centuries. As we walk beside the caravan, we begin to notice how carefully everything has been organized. Experienced guides travel in the front. They know where water can be found, which mountain passes are safest, which valleys should be avoided after heavy rain. Behind them, the merchants follow. Each camel carries carefully balanced cargo, silk wrapped in protective cloth, bundles of cotton, rolls of fine paper, porcelain packed inside straw, glassware from distant workshops. spices sealed tightly against the dry air. Every item has been packed with extraordinary care. A broken jar, a torn bundle, or a misplaced crate could mean the difference between profit and ruin after a journey that was lasting many, many months. Travelers almost never cross these lands alone. The desert could be beautiful, but it demanded respect. Sandstorms could erase familiar landmarks within minutes. Mountain weather could change without warning. Bandits sometimes watched the roads, hoping to surprise small groups traveling in isolation. Together, a caravan offered safety, protection, and companionship. In many ways, it became a temporary village. People shared meals, shared stories, shared news from distant lands. Some travelers had spent years moving between cities that many of us know today only from history books. One merchant speaks of Chang'an, the great capital of China's Han dynasty. Other remembers bustling markets in Persia. Someone else tells stories of ships arriving in ports along the Mediterranean Sea. Each person carries not only goods, but memories, knowledge, language. Entire worlds continued within conversations. As evening approaches, the pace slows further. No one seems impatient. These journeys taught people to think differently about time. A destination thousands of miles away could not be reached in a single week, or even a single month. Instead, progress was measured one careful day at a time, one oasis, one mountain pass, one safe arrival after another. Perhaps there is something quietly comforting about that. Our modern lives often encourage us to hurry, to measure success by speed. The travelers beside us understood another rhythm: steady effort, patient progress, trust that every careful step eventually becomes a remarkable journey. Ahead, the landscape begins to change. The open desert gives way to rocky hills. In the fading light, a large stone building appears beside the road. Its walls are thick, its gate stands open. Warm light flickers inside. The caravan has reached tonight's destination, a place that travelers across Asia come to know well. A caravanserai, a home, if only for one peaceful night. The great wooden gates open slowly, their heavy hinges groan after another long day of welcoming travelers from distant lands. As our caravan enters, a feeling of quiet relief spreads among the merchants. For tonight, the journey pauses. The building before us is called a caravanserai. The word comes from Persian language and is simply translated. It means a place where caravans may rest. Yet it was much more than a regular inn. It was a sanctuary, a marketplace, a meeting place, a refuge against weather, against distance and uncertainty. Across the Silk Roads, thousands of caravanserais were built over many centuries. Some were quite modest, Others were enormous stone fortresses capable of sheltering hundreds of travelers and their animals. Many stood roughly a day's journey apart, allowing caravans to travel from one safe haven to another. Without them, long distance trade would have been far more difficult. The courtyard is alive with gentle activity. Camels kneel patiently as their heavy loads are removed. Leather straps loosen, bundles of silk are carried carefully indoors. Water buckets are filled from a deep stone well. Nearby, stable hands quietly brush dust from the animals' thick coats. The familiar ringing of camel bells slowly fades into silence. For the first time all day, everyone can simply rest. A cook stirs a large pot suspended above glowing coals. The aroma drifts across the courtyard. Lentils, onions, fresh herbs, perhaps a little lamb. Warm flatbread is passed from hand to hand. Simple food. Yet, after weeks of travel, it tastes like a celebration. As darkness settles over the caravanserai, something remarkable begins to happen. Trade pauses. Conversation begins. A merchant from Persia unrolls a beautifully woven carpet, not to sell it, simply to sit with friends while sharing supper. Nearby, a traveler from India describes the monsoon rains. Another speaks of the snow-covered mountains beyond the Pamirs. A Chinese scholar carefully unwraps sheets of fine paper unlike anything many of the others have ever seen. A physician from the Middle East discusses herbs used to ease fever. Each conversation carries ideas farther than any single caravan ever could. This, perhaps more than anything, was the true gift of the Silk Roads. Not merely the exchange of goods, but the exchange of knowledge. Historians often remind us that ideas traveled these routes as successfully as merchants did. Buddhism spread from India into Central Asia and China. Islam later connected vast regions throughout faith and scholarship and trade. Nestorian Christianity reached communities deep within Asia, astronomy, mathematics, medicine, art, architecture. Even musical instruments slowly evolved as cultures borrowed from one another. Civilizations rarely grow in complete isolation. More often, they grow through conversation, through curiosity, throughout the willingness to learn from strangers. One corner of the courtyard grows quieter. Several children sit together while an elderly traveler tells stories beneath the stars. No one seems concerned that they come from different lands. Children rarely ask first about nationality. They ask for stories, for wonder, for laughter. Perhaps adults sometimes forget how naturally curiosity can overcome difference. Above us, the night sky stretches from one horizon to another. Without modern cities, without electric lights, the stars appear almost impossibly bright. Travelers have relied upon these same constellations for generations. The North Star, the familiar curve of the Great Bear, countless others whose names change from language to language, yet remain the same lights above every traveler. Tomorrow, the caravan will continue east, or perhaps west. The direction matters less than the journey itself, because every mile traveled along these roads quietly changed the world. Through silk, or paper, or spices, and sometimes through nothing more than two strangers sharing a meal beneath the same sky. Tonight, we have become part of that story, and our journey is only halfway complete. Morning arrives quietly. The first rays of sunlight reach the courtyard long before the travelers are ready to depart. One by one, lanterns are extinguished. The campfire is reduced to warm embers. Fresh bread is shared. Water skins are filled once more. Soon, the familiar rhythm of the caravan begins again. The camel bells ring softly. The desert welcomes another day. As we continue our journey, it becomes clear that the Silk Roads were never simply about commerce. Silk may have given these routes their famous name, but it was only one thread in a much larger tapestry. Imagine opening one of the merchant's bundles. Inside, maybe delicate porcelain from China, its surface so smooth that many people in distant lands could scarcely believe it had been shaped by human hands. Another crate contains paper, something we hardly think about today. Yet paper transformed civilizations. Before it spread westward, many societies relied upon parchment made from animal skins or papyrus imported from Egypt. Paper was lighter, often less expensive, easier to produce as knowledge traveled upon it. Books became more accessible, ideas moved more freely. Libraries slowly expanded. The written word found new paths across continents. Nearby, another mentioned carefully abrupts a small package. Inside are fragrant spices, cinnamon, cloves, pepper. To many families, these were extraordinary luxuries. A handful of peppercorns might travel thousands of miles before finally reaching a kitchen far from where they had first been harvested. Imagine that journey. A spice grown in southern India, passing through countless hands, crossing mountains, deserts, kingdoms, languages, until finally seasoning a meal in a city whose people had never seen the forests where it began. The Silk Roads quietly connected worlds that would otherwise have remained estranged. And now everything moved inside crates. Ideas traveled just as easily. A Buddhist monk carries carefully copied manuscripts toward Central Asia. Generations later, those teachings will continue eastward into China, Korea, and Japan. An astronomer shares observations of night sky gathered in another land. A physician describes new methods of treating an illness. A craftsman demonstrates techniques for working metal that neighboring cultures gradually will adopt and improve. No single civilization invented everything. Progress often emerged because people were willing to observe, to borrow, to learn, to listen. History is full of moments when curiosity proved more powerful than isolation. As we walk, we hear many languages: Persian, Sogdian, Chinese, various Turkic dialects, Greek, Arabian in later centuries, and countless local dialects spoken in villages along the road. Few travelers understood every conversation, yet trade continued. People found ways to communicate: a gesture, a drawing in the sand, a shared meal. Sometimes a smile was enough to begin. Perhaps that is one of the quietest lessons hidden within these roads. Human beings have always been remarkably creative when they truly wished to understand one another. Of course, the Silk Roads also carried less welcome travelers. Diseases moved alongside merchants and pilgrims. Historians believe these interconnected trade networks contributed to the spread of epidemics across Eurasia, including the pandemic known as Black Death centuries later, although the exact routes and timing remain subjects to ongoing research. History rarely offers only blessings. Connection brings opportunity. It can also bring risk. The road teaches both lessons. The afternoon sun begins to soften again. Long shadows stretch across the landscape. Ahead, the mountains glow with warm shades of gold and amber. The air glows cooler. Another evening approaches. Another campfire waits beyond the horizon. And beneath the same endless sky, our journey continues. Because the greatest treasures carried along these roads were never just silk or spices or even gold. They were ideas, and ideas can travel farther than any caravan. The sun has almost disappeared now. Its final light lingers on distant mountains, painting their peaks in shades of amber, rose, and deep, deep violet. Our caravan slows once again. Another day's journey has come to an end. The camels kneel quietly, one by one. Their heavy burdens are gently lowered to the ground. Small campfires begin appearing across the open plain. Someone unfolds thick wool blankets. Another traveler carefully prepares a pot of tea. A kettle begins to sing softly above glowing coals. The air smells of cedar smoke, fresh bread, and the coolness that always follows the desert heat. There is no hurry here, once again. No one checks the clock, no one counts unread messages or calls. The travelers measure time differently. By sunsets, by seasons, by the distance between one oasis and the next. Perhaps there is something peaceful about that. For thousands of years, human beings have looked toward the horizon and wondered what lay beyond it. Some searched for wealth, others for knowledge, others simply hoped to build a better life for their families. The Silk Roads carried all of those dreams around the fire. And the conversations begin once again. A merchant from Persia laughs at the story told by a traveler from China. An old guide points toward the stars. He explains how generations of caravans have used familiar constellations to navigate across vast landscape where few roads were marked. Long before maps became detailed, the night sky was often the only most trusted guide of all. The stars belong to everyone. No empire owns them. No kingdom can draw borders across them. They shine equally over deserts, mountains, forests, and oceans. The same stars above this quiet camp also shine above Rome, above Alexandria, above India, and villages of northern China. For centuries, travelers ended their days beneath the same sky. Different languages, different customs or beliefs. Yet every evening they looked upward and saw the same universe. Perhaps that realization made the world feel just a little smaller. The Silk Roads remind us of something that is easy to forget. Civilizations have never existed entirely alone. The clothes we wear, the foods we enjoy, the books we read, the numbers we use, the inventions that shape our lives. Many reached us because countless strangers, separated by thousands of miles, shared their knowledge with one another. History is not only the story of kingdoms, it is also the story of connection, of curiosity, of ordinary people willing to cross unfamiliar landscapes in search of something beyond the horizon. As the fire burns lower, the voices around us become quieter. One traveler gently tunes a small stringed instrument before setting it aside. Another wraps himself in a blanket and closes his eyes. The camels rest peacefully nearby. Only the occasional soft bell breaks the silence. A cool breeze moves across the open land. It carries with it the scent of earth, smoke, and distant rain somewhere beyond the mountains. Tomorrow, the caravan will continue. It always does. Some travelers will eventually reach China, others Persia, others the shores of Mediterranean. Many will never complete their entire journey. Few people ever did. The Silk Roads were simply too vast. Instead, each traveler carried one small part of a much larger story, and perhaps that is true of the history itself. No single person sees everything. No single life explains the whole world. But together, across generations, across continents, across countless quiet evenings, just like this one, humanity slowly writes its history. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of history's greatest networks of exploration, trade, and cultural exchange. Tonight, we crossed deserts, shared meals with strangers, followed camel caravans beneath endless skies, and discovered that the greatest treasures carried along the Silk Roads were not silk or spices, but ideas, curiosity, connection, and the willingness to learn from one another. The library will be here whenever you're ready for another journey. Another volume is already waiting quietly on the shelf. Until then, May your mind remain curious. May your heart remain open. And may your dreams carry you somewhere beautiful. Good night.